There's a strange kind of silence that happens when a younger woman looks at an older man for just a second longer than she needed to. Not a dramatic movie moment, just a pause. Long enough that you wonder if you imagined it. And because you've learned not to flatter yourself, you quietly explain it away. She's just being polite. She's like that with everyone. It couldn't mean anything. Most men never admit how quickly they dismiss the possibility that someone younger could genuinely notice them. Not because they're insecure all the time, but because they've spent years teaching themselves not to expect too much. If this conversation feels familiar already, stay with me. Subscribe if you enjoy these quiet conversations about relationships and human psychology. There are things we rarely say out loud, and sometimes hearing them changes the way we see ourselves. Age does something interesting. It doesn't only change your face, it changes your expectations. At 25, rejection feels temporary. At 45 or 50, sometimes it starts feeling like a permanent rule. So when a younger woman smiles a little differently, when she remembers something small you mentioned weeks ago, when she seems unusually comfortable around you, your first instinct often isn't excitement. It's doubt. And that doubt makes many men completely miss what is actually happening. Not because every younger woman is interested, she isn't, but because interest rarely arrives looking obvious. It usually arrives quietly, almost carefully. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. A man assumes she's simply friendly. Meanwhile, everyone else in the room has already noticed she's paying more attention to him than anyone else. Not in loud ways, in tiny ways. The kind that disappear if you're only looking for obvious flirting. She laughs, but only after looking to see if you're laughing too. You're telling a story in a group conversation. Others interrupt. She waits. She wants to hear how your sentence ends. That sounds so small. Because it is. Yet attention is one of the most expensive emotional gifts people give each other. We live in a world where everyone's distracted. Phones vibrate. Eyes wander. Conversations break apart before they even begin. Someone choosing to stay mentally present with you, that isn't nothing, especially when they don't have to. And here's something people often misunderstand. Many younger women aren't drawn toward an older man because he tries to appear younger. Sometimes the opposite happens. They're drawn toward the moments when he stops trying to prove anything. There's a steadiness, a calmness, not perfection, not endless confidence, just less noise. She notices that you don't interrupt people every few seconds. You don't compete for attention. You don't seem desperate to be liked. Ironically, the things you stopped doing years ago because life humbled you, those are sometimes exactly the things she notices first. But don't rush ahead, because this is where many men accidentally fool themselves. Kindness isn't attraction. Respect isn't attraction. Comfort isn't always attraction. Human relationships are more complicated than that. Someone can genuinely enjoy your company without wanting anything romantic. Learning that difference matters, because confidence grows stronger when it isn't built on fantasy. Still, there's one behavior that quietly separates ordinary friendliness from something that often carries emotional curiosity. It happens before compliments, before flirting, before almost everything else. She begins looking for reasons to stay in your world, not because she has to, because she wants another conversation, another excuse, another few minutes. Think about how rare that actually is. Most adults are trying to leave conversations politely. They're checking the time, thinking about work, planning dinner, moving toward the next obligation. So when someone keeps extending a conversation that technically could have ended 5 minutes ago, something deserves your attention, not certainty, attention. She asks one more question, then another. She circles back after walking away. She remembers something unfinished and suddenly comes back to tell you. It's subtle, almost invisible, unless you've learned where to look. And oddly enough, this isn't even the sign that surprises me most. The next one is quieter. Most men completely overlook it because they're watching her words. when they should have been watching what happens during the silence between them. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. Watch two strangers standing together for more than 5 seconds without speaking. One of them will usually reach for a phone, look around the room, clear their throat, say something that doesn't really matter. We rush to fill empty space because silence can feel exposing. But something different often happens when two people feel emotionally safe with each other. The silence stays. Not because they have nothing to say, because neither one feels pressured to perform. And this is one of those moments that many men miss. A younger woman may be talking with friends, laughing, moving through the room effortlessly. Yet when she finds herself beside you, the pace changes. The conversation slows. She doesn't seem desperate to impress you. She isn't searching for the perfect sentence. She simply stays. Maybe you're both watching the rain outside a cafe window. Maybe you're standing at a work event after everyone else has drifted into smaller conversations. Maybe you're walking toward the parking lot after a gathering has ended. Nothing remarkable is happening, at least on the surface. But she doesn't seem eager to escape the quiet. That doesn't automatically mean attraction. Some people are simply comfortable around certain personalities. Still, when emotional interest begins to grow, comfort often arrives before flirting ever does. It's a strange order. Hollywood usually tells us attraction starts with fireworks. Real life is often softer. Two people who keep finding themselves in the same conversations, a few longer glances, an unexpected sense of ease. Then curiosity begins doing its quiet work. She starts wondering what you're thinking, not because you've become mysterious on purpose, because you're not constantly explaining yourself. Older men sometimes underestimate the value of this. When you've lived through enough disappointment, enough success, enough mistakes, you usually stop talking just to fill space. You answer honestly. Then you let the conversation breathe. Ironically, that breathing room often invites someone else to step closer. There's another detail I've noticed. It isn't what she says, it's what she asks. Listen carefully to the difference. Someone making polite conversation asks about facts. What do you do? Where are you from? How long have you worked here? Those questions are normal. They don't necessarily reveal anything beyond simple friendliness. But emotional curiosity sounds different. What made you choose that? Were you always like that? What was that experience actually like? Now she isn't collecting information, she's trying to understand the person behind it. That shift matters, because attraction often begins with fascination before it becomes romance. She wants the story beneath the story, and without realizing it, you begin telling her things you rarely tell people. Not deeply personal secrets, just pieces of yourself. The reason you changed careers, why you enjoy being alone sometimes, the lesson you learned from a mistake years ago. You finish speaking, and she doesn't immediately change the subject. She sits with it, almost like she's trying to picture the younger version of you. Most men assume women only notice appearance first. Often they do notice appearance, we're all human. But many women also notice emotional consistency, especially after enough life experience teaches them how exhausting unpredictability can be. An older man who listens carefully, keeps his word, laughs without needing to dominate every conversation, can become unexpectedly attractive. Not because he's older, because of what those years have shaped. Of course, not every older man develops those qualities. Age alone doesn't create maturity. Time simply gives us opportunities. Some people grow, some don't. That's why confidence can never come from birthdays alone. It comes from becoming someone whose presence feels peaceful. And there's one moment that reveals whether she experiences you that way. It's so ordinary that almost everyone overlooks it. She begins sharing little pieces of her life that nobody asked for. A funny story from childhood, something embarrassing that happened that morning, a random thought she had while driving. None of it seems important. Until you realize something. People don't reveal random details to someone who feels emotionally distant. Those tiny stories are invitations, not declarations. Invitations. She's quietly saying, I want you to know what my world looks like. And if you pay attention, you'll notice something else beginning to change. Not the way she talks to you, the way she looks at you, especially when you aren't looking back. There's a look people have when they're simply seeing you, and then there's another look, the one that happens when they're quietly studying you. Most of the time, you never catch it, because the moment you turn your head, it's already gone. Not hidden in panic, just gently replaced with something ordinary. A younger woman who is becoming emotionally interested doesn't always stare. In fact, many won't, especially if she's naturally reserved or unsure of how you see her. Instead, she watches in pieces. While you're talking to someone else, when you're focused on your coffee, when you're helping someone without expecting praise. Those are the moments she learns who you are when you're not trying to impress anyone. And that's important. Because attraction isn't always built during conversation. Sometimes it's built while one person quietly observes the other. I remember a man once telling me, every time I looked up, she'd already looked away. He laughed when he said it. He assumed he was imagining things. Maybe he was. Sometimes we do imagine patterns because we hope they're there. But a few weeks later, someone else mentioned the same woman. You know she watches you whenever you're not paying attention, right? He had no idea. Not because he wasn't observant, because he never believed he was someone worth watching. That sentence stayed with me. Not because of the woman, because of him. How many men move through life assuming they're invisible? More than you might think. Not loudly, quietly. They stop expecting genuine interest, so when it finally appears, they explain it away before it has a chance to mean anything. This doesn't only happen in dating, it happens everywhere. Someone compliments your work, you call it luck. Someone enjoys talking with you, you assume they're just being nice. Someone remembers something personal about you. You think they probably remember everyone's stories. See the pattern? Sometimes the hardest person to convince that you're interesting is yourself. Now, this doesn't mean every glance carries romantic meaning. People look at each other for countless reasons. Curiosity, kindness, simple coincidence. That's why it's dangerous to build fantasies from one moment. But when small signs begin collecting together, the longer conversations, the comfortable silence, the personal questions, the tiny stories she volunteers, the repeated glances. Now you're looking at a pattern instead of a single clue. Human emotions usually reveal themselves that way, quietly, piece by piece. There's another behavior that's surprisingly revealing. Watch what happens when you make other people laugh. Not her, other people. Maybe you've told a story. Maybe you've made some dry little joke that catches everyone off guard. The room laughs. In that brief moment, many people immediately look toward the person they feel closest to, almost instinctively. It's a deeply human reaction. We enjoy sharing emotional moments with someone who matters to us. You might notice her eyes finding yours, just for a heartbeat, almost as if she's checking whether you enjoyed the moment too. Again, one moment proves nothing, but repeated moments begin telling a story. And then something even quieter starts happening. She begins noticing changes in you. You trimmed your beard. She notices. You seem tired one afternoon. She asks if everything's okay. You mentioned weeks ago that you enjoy a certain author. Months later, she brings it up again. That level of memory is rarely accidental. Attention leaves fingerprints. People remember what carries emotional weight, not because they force themselves to, because their mind quietly decides, this person matters enough to save that detail. It's actually one of the most beautiful things about human connection. We become little historians of the people we care about, collecting details without realizing we're collecting them. And yet, there's still one mistake older men often make at exactly this point. A mistake that can quietly push genuine connection away before it has the chance to grow. Ironically, it comes from fear, not arrogance. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing it almost everywhere. Fear has a way of disguising itself as wisdom. It sounds reasonable. It feels protective. It whispers, "Don't embarrass yourself. She's just being nice. You're reading too much into this." Sometimes, that voice is right. Sometimes it saves you from imagining a story that isn't there. But there are moments when it becomes so loud that it drowns out reality. I've spoken with men who could recognize attraction in someone else's life almost instantly. A friend tells them a story, and they smile. Oh, she's definitely interested. Yet when the same behaviors happen to them, everything changes. Suddenly there's another explanation for every glance, every question, every effort. It's almost as if accepting someone's interest would feel more dangerous than rejecting it yourself. Because if you never believe it, you never have to risk finding out. That kind of self-protection is understandable. Life teaches it. A painful breakup, a marriage that quietly unraveled. Years of feeling unnoticed. Those experiences leave fingerprints on the way we interpret new people. So when a younger woman starts making room for you in her life, your mind may search for reasons why it can't possibly mean anything. Not because you're negative, because disappointment has a long memory. And here's where something subtle often happens. She notices your hesitation, not necessarily your words, your hesitation. Maybe she walks over to talk, and you end the conversation sooner than you needed to. Maybe she asks about your weekend, and you give a polite answer instead of the real one. Maybe she laughs, hoping you'll stay a little longer, but you leave first. Not because you don't enjoy her company, because you don't want to assume too much. From your perspective, you're being respectful. From hers, she may quietly wonder if you're simply not interested. This is where so many connections fade without either person doing anything wrong. No dramatic rejection, no argument, just two people protecting themselves at the exact same time. She's trying not to appear too obvious. You're trying not to misread her. And somewhere in the middle, silence wins. That's why emotional maturity isn't about becoming fearless. Very few people are. It's about becoming honest enough to stay present even when certainty doesn't exist. You don't need to force anything. You don't need clever lines or carefully planned moves. In many cases, what creates attraction isn't perfect confidence. It's emotional steadiness. The ability to enjoy someone's company without trying to control the outcome. Think about how different that feels. Instead of constantly asking yourself, does she like me? Another question quietly takes its place. How do I feel when I'm with her? Do you feel relaxed? Curious? Able to be yourself? Or are you performing? Trying to become someone you think she wants? That question changes everything. Because genuine connection isn't built by convincing someone to choose you. It's built by allowing both people to discover whether they naturally fit together. Ironically, that calmness often becomes attractive in itself. There's another sign that rarely gets mentioned. A younger woman who feels emotionally drawn to an older man may begin inviting him into ordinary parts of her life. Not glamorous moments, ordinary ones. She tells you about the cafe she always visits. She sends a photo of a sunset because it reminded her of something you once said. She asks your opinion on a decision she could easily make alone. These moments seem almost too small to matter, but that's exactly why they do. People don't usually weave someone into their everyday life unless that person has started occupying space in their mind. Not constantly, just consistently. And consistency is often more meaningful than intensity. Grand gestures can happen in a single evening. Quiet presence is built over time. Still, there is one final sign that ties all the others together. Oddly enough, it has very little to do with flirting. It has everything to do with how she makes you feel about yourself when she's around. And once you recognize it, you'll never look at attraction in quite the same way again. There's a feeling that's easy to miss because it doesn't arrive with excitement. It arrives with relief. You spend time with her, and afterward you notice something unusual. You weren't trying to be impressive. You weren't measuring every word. You didn't spend the drive home replaying every sentence, wondering if you sounded confident enough. You were simply yourself. That feeling is rarer than many people realize. Real attraction isn't always about butterflies. Sometimes it's about the absence of them, the absence of the constant pressure to perform. And when a younger woman genuinely enjoys being around an older man, this is often what begins to grow between them. Not perfection, ease. She doesn't make you feel like you're auditioning for a role. She responds to the version of you that has become quieter over the years, the one who has learned that confidence doesn't need to be loud. I've noticed something interesting. When people feel emotionally safe with someone, they slowly stop editing themselves. She laughs a little louder. She admits she's nervous about something. She tells you a dream she's almost embarrassed to say out loud. She lets you see moments that aren't polished. Not because she's trying to create intimacy, because intimacy often grows naturally when two people stop pretending they have everything figured out. You may even notice small changes in the way she includes you. She asks, "What do you think?" Not because she can't decide, because your opinion has started carrying emotional weight. She remembers to tell you how something turned out after asking your advice days earlier. She follows up on conversations that most people would have forgotten. That follow-through matters. It quietly says, "I didn't forget you after we said goodbye." In today's world, that's more meaningful than it sounds. People are busy. Their attention is scattered. When someone consistently returns to you, not out of obligation but by choice, it tells you something about where you exist in their thoughts. Not certainty, never certainty, but possibility. And possibility deserves patience. This is also where many men discover something unexpected. The connection they value most isn't based on age at all. It isn't built because she's younger. It's built because she makes them feel seen, really seen. Not for their job, not for their experience, not for what they can provide, but for the person they've quietly become after years of victories, mistakes, disappointments, and growth. Perhaps that's why these connections can feel so surprising. They don't begin with trying to erase the age difference. They begin with two people noticing something much deeper than age, the way they feel in each other's presence. If you've listened this far, I hope one idea stays with you. Don't spend your energy searching for 7 perfect signs. Human beings don't work that way. Some women are expressive, some are shy. Some make eye contact easily. Others become nervous around someone they genuinely like. There isn't a checklist that guarantees another person's feelings, and that's actually good news, because it reminds us that relationships are conversations, not puzzles to solve. So if a younger woman keeps finding reasons to be near you, if she listens with real attention, if she remembers the little things, if she shares pieces of her ordinary life, if silence between you feels peaceful instead of awkward, if she gradually invites you into her world, don't rush to write a love story. But don't rush to dismiss it either. Stay curious. Stay grounded. Let the connection reveal itself at its own pace. Sometimes the strongest relationships don't begin with certainty. They begin with two people who quietly stop pretending they aren't interested in knowing each other. And maybe that's the sign that matters most of all.